I remember when they put Morbius out in the theater again, because I think Sony thought like, oh, this will be like The Room, or this will be our version of another historically bad movie.
Uh,
Is it
Schindler's
just The
List.
Room? I feel like there's Schindler's List. This will be our version of Schindler's List, except we're all Liam Neeson crying at the end because we all felt like we could have done more.
Oh, we're not recording, right? Don't. Oh, we just.
We're
Oh
recording.
no!
Nah.
don't put that bit in the show.
Don't put the Schindler's List joke in. All right.
I was gonna say a different film, but the Schindler's List came out, so.
Now I don't know if this is one of those instances where you're saying sincerely don't put this in or put this in. I'm not
I
sure.
was gonna say Citizen Kane, and then Schindler's List came out.
I don't know. I felt like the Liam Neeson crying bit really flowed well into that. It almost sounded rehearsed.
Oh. Do a different intro.
Man, always do the bit for the intro.
What about the weather, guys? Am I right?
Yo.
Eee.
Yes, sir. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Smark Avengers. My name is Corey, and with me are Dylan and John.
Hi.
Who?
Hello.
How you guys doing?
Good, I guess.
Good, you guys? Okay.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Cool. So today is our very first episode in September, which means fall's around the corner. This has nothing to do with fall. I just wanted to remark that this is our first September episode. But this one should be interesting because this is something that I've grown to realize it feels like a lot of people forgot ever happened. So DC and Marvel are rivals, have been for a very long time. Much like how WCW would refer to the WWF as that company up north or New York, Marvel used to refer to DC as the quote distinguished competition. And it was a rivalry, but it wasn't particularly an ugly one at any point up until I think Mark Miller rattling the cages in the early 2000s. But yeah, Marvel and DC, they're the Coke and Pepsi, the WWE and AEW, and actually that's really mean to say that one of those companies are AEW, isn't it?
Yeah.
One of them is under the same parent company, though. But yeah, any thoughts on the whole Marvel versus DC idea?
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think that the concept it's one of those things. It's funny you should bring up AEW and WWF or WWE because really the comparison would have been WWF and WCW was because there were two different brands that had their own separate set of fans, and there was a lot of crossover there, but there were a lot of dedicated fans on both sides. And then whenever both companies actually did manage to do a crossover, everybody was disappointed. Except me. I thought it was fun. But like it's one of those things where you're like, it's good to talk about it. It's good to discuss. It's good to make a podcast about it. The idea of these two companies. What if Superman fought Spider-Man? You know, like wouldn't that, you know, the Justice League versus the Avengers? It's fun to fantasy book that. But the problem with that is, in reality, how do you make that work? Like one guy has to win, one guy has to lose. It's a tricky, you know. It's good in theory, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so the two companies, like you said, have always been kind of at odds with one another in that sense. In this, that they were sharing space on the newsstand. Writers would hop back and forth between them, no issues. No, it is very much like kind of like the Attitude Era, WCW, WWF, where you know writers or artists would hop back and forth occasionally. You have the Image Comics thing, which I guess you could maybe equate to ECW, when some of the artists felt like they weren't being appreciated in a way that they thought was suitable, so they just started their own company somewhere else. But at the end of the day, DC and Marvel had a kind of a relationship in the sense that there were some crossover comics that had occurred. There was a series of where the Justice League interacted with the Avengers for the first time in I think it was like the 80s maybe that happened. But the event that we're going to talk about today was very important to me as a formative child because as a kid I used to collect trading cards. There was a DC versus Marvel crossover between the two companies that to help promote it they put out trading cards as well. So were you guys aware of the DC versus Marvel series?
Yes.
Briefly, kind of. Not.
Yeah.
Like I never read it. Yeah.
And yeah,
Okay.
more the concept than the actual execution.
Yeah.
Okay. So DC and Marvel, this came out in February. The first issue came out in February 1996. It ran for 4 issues. So issues 1 and 3. Actually, I think issues 1 and 4 were by DC, and issues 2 and 3 were by Marvel. So they was even like cross-published in that sense.
Mm.
So the issues that Marvel put out,
idea.
they flopped the title to Marvel versus DC as well. And the writers were Ron Mars and Peter David. So I think Ron Mars was representing DC and Peter David representing Marvel. And the artists were Dan Jurgens and Claudio Castellini.
It's pronounced Castellini.
Yeah. Jurgens from DC and Claudio from Marvel. So this was a crossover miniseries where Marvel heroes fought their counterparts in the DC world, and the outcome of each battle was determined by a reader ballot, which you got to vote on in advance because they had announced this ahead of time at your local comic book store. So the comic book store was given a ballot. Their customers were to fill out the ballot, give it back to the comic book store owner. The comic book store owner sent it in to a headquarters where they tallied the votes, and that's how they did some of these results. So you guys have not read this series. You just knew it existed, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, cool. So essentially the storyline is this. There are these 2 gods who are brothers. One personified the DC universe, and the other represented the Marvel universe. And they became aware of each other's existence for the first ever time. Like somehow they had kind of existed without being aware of one another. So once they did, and finding out that they were somewhat equals, they decided they had to find out who was superior. So each brother combined, it took their universe and slapped them with the other universe to have them battle it out, with the losing universe ceasing to exist at the end of the day.
That's fair.
That's pretty much what happens. You have these 2 deities that sort of combined their worlds together, and that's why we have these fights. So there were 11 fights in total between the 2 universes. There was a definitive, somebody was going to win more than the other. And this is going to be one of those times where we're actually going to talk about wrestling because of cross-promotional shows.
Okay.
So very famously, at the moment, the big crossover show that people think of is Forbidden Door, which is done by AEW in their partnerships with New Japan Wrestling out of Japan and CMLL out of Mexico.
When you say
I am not a big
crossover, what do you mean?
I mean, it's of cross promotional shows. This is the biggest that you're going to get for the foreseeable future.
I think that context is very important.
Yes, because I was going to say that, like, I'm not a big fan of using this analogy because the Forbidden Door shows very heavily favor AEW's talent.
Well, it's basically just an AEW show with other talent in it, which is not that different from an AEW show.
Yes. So what I was going to go with is I was going to go back into the 1980s and the territory days, and I was going to bring up the Super Clash series, which were cross-promotional shows featuring USWA and WCCW and other promotions of that ilk. Are you familiar with the Super Clash shows?
A little bit. And that sounds like a better kind of cross-promotional thing.
So,
So
this was in the day where the wrestling promoters were very protective of their talent and their brand and their name and their titles. So these shows were kind of considered to be flops because everything had to be even, or else no one would want to be a part of it. So, case in point, the first, I think it's Super Clash 3, you have a title versus title match between Jerry Lawler in the Memphis title and Kerry Von Erich and the WCCW title that ends in a disqualification. Well, not in disqualification. The match gets thrown out because the referee calls it because Kerry Von Erich is bleeding too much. So, like, those shows are full of that. It's sort of like everything's kind of presented evenly, but they had to have outs because no promoter wanted to like have their champion get beat by another company's champion.
Right. That's exactly it. That's the whole point of these cross promotional shows. People want to see what's going to happen, but because it's a wrestling thing, you need to leave a little bit of open to interpretation, like space. So like obviously, if you pay money to that show and it's just a clean finish between one company or the other company, then everybody's going to leave that show going, well, I guess that company's better. And that's going to negatively affect the other company. That's just the way it's going to be.
Exactly. So then what's your incentive as one of those other companies to participate if there's the risk that you're going to be seen as the lesser?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing about pro wrestling is that's what it's about. The finishes and the shadiness and the gimmicks and stuff. You can get away with that very easily to make people go, boy, if it wasn't for that guy, that company would have won. You know what I mean? Like, which is a harder thing. A is a harder thing to pull off in any other medium, and B, not what they do in AEW Forbidden Door.
So here, the thing about the Marvel versus DC or DC versus Marvel, depending on which side you want to, what issue you're reading in particular, there were 11 fights between the two universes. 6 of them were written and created by the creative team, and the other 5, the winners were determined by those reader ballots. So, I will tell you, the story is not. It's not a world-ending great story of all time. This is an event. This is the equivalent of a popcorn flick in movie theaters. Like, you're not going here to see a beautifully written story that's going to touch on the human experience. You're like, no, I want to see, Captain America versus Batman.
Right.
Like, I don't need an in-depth reason for why they're going to do what they're going to do. I just need to see them fight. So that's what a lot of these stories were a lot of these just chance encounters between these characters, not understanding what's going on and like what happens. Are you familiar with DC versus Mortal Kombat, that video game that came out a few years ago, probably 10 years or so ago now?
No.
Okay. So they did a DC versus Mortal Kombat video game because NetherRealm, who makes the Mortal Kombat games, also makes a lot of DC games. Like, they make the Injustice games. Very famously, the Injustice video games are sort of the control environment for them to test out things they want to do in Mortal Kombat. So in that, there was a reason for why the DC characters were, Batman, who historically would not kill, was now going to actively do a fatality to somebody. And that was like, there was like a rage virus that like would take over their body at the beginning of a fight, and they were like incapable of resisting it. So there was an explanation for that. There was not really an explanation for this, just sort of like confusion and the old Marvel method of, hey, I don't know who you are. Let's have a misunderstanding where we think each other is the villain. We'll fight, come to a draw, and then team up to fight the real villain. Like, that's how a lot of these fights were introduced and took place. So again, the whys are not important, or the hows even. I think it would be a fun game if I tell you guys what the fight was, you tell me who you think was the winner, and I will confirm who the winner is and how the fight went.
Okay.
Because, like I said, not a lot to talk about in the story.
Well, you could do that at the beginning. You could just be like, well, here's the story. Hobgoblin stole a serum, and then they fought about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's probably as deep as it goes, right?
There's not a lot to it. So we're going to start with, these were the 6 fights that the creative team. So this was Ron Mars and Peter David essentially making the call on who wins these fights. So our very first fight that we're going to talk about, representing DC Comics, the King of Atlantis, Aquaman, versus Marvel, the King of Atlantis, Namor the Submariner.
Oh, dear.
Who won?
Namor.
It's pronounced Namor.
Namor.
Namor McKenzie, get his name right. Which, by the way, his legitimate last name is McKenzie. That is not a joke. He is Prince Namor McKenzie.
Mr. McKenzie wins.
Hang on. Does Aquaman have his magic hand?
Magic hand?
Point?
No. This is Harpoon era. This is before the magic hand. This is Harpoon.
Oh, then 100% Mr. McKenzie.
Yeah, it's got to be Namor.
Incorrect. Aquaman took the victory here.
How?
Because there's a very big difference between Aquaman's power set and Namor's power set. They're both equals in a lot of ways, except Aquaman can control aquatic life, and Namor can't. So, in the midst of the fight, Aquaman summons a whale to leap out of the water and land on top of Namor. Namor can't move because there's a giant whale on top of him and is declared the loser.
Couldn't he fight his way out of the whale?
He could have, but he didn't.
That's lazy.
What an idiot.
I know, right? Hey, can we do an episode where we kill Namor? Because I've got a really good idea.
We'll do a follow-up. So, at our very first fight, the first victory goes to DC Comics. In our second fight, representing DC Comics, she is a Master Thief Supreme and the apple of Batman's eye, Catwoman, versus the lethal assassin and the woman who gives Daredevil a lot of issues, Elektra. Who do you think wins?
I mean, I would say Elektra, right? She's killed people.
100%. Yeah, and like Catwoman isn't really famous for her fighting skill. She's more of a burglar than a... I'm sure she can handle herself, but you know, she's...
Yeah, but also we said
100 stuff.
We said 100% for the last one. That should have been a slam dunk. Right? I'm conflicted. I mean, I would still say Elektra, but like that right off the bat, you threw me a curveball, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Elektra's like the deadliest assassin in the world, so...
Bullseye?
No. Elektra is.
Isn't Bullseye an assassin?
Did kill Elektra, though.
Nah.
Right. Don't you think?
I think he wins by default on that one.
Thank you. Excellent point.
Elektra kills lots of people.
So does Bullseye. Look, that's a different podcast. I think Elektra kills a lot of people, including Catwoman.
Yeah,
or
I reckon.
At least beats her up.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Elektra won by cutting off Catwoman's whip as she was hanging from a girder on a building under construction, but Catwoman survived by falling into a dumpster filled with sand.
Whenever you said cutting off her, I'm like, thank God you said whip, because I'm like, I didn't know what you were about to say. Her hands?
Yeah, right? Could have gone either way.
Yeah.
No, Elektra.
They sort of ripped off Batman Returns there as well.
Yeah.
A little bit.
If you're going to rip off something, rip off the best, right?
Yeah. I was actually just talking to somebody about Batman Returns, because again, I get to tell people, like, yeah, that was the first movie I ever saw in the theater, and they go, oh, that explains a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you were like,
all
why
right,
don't you listen to our podcast where we talk about it?
Yeah, I did actually.
Did they listen
to it? We were talking about, because I was talking to them about the Batman movies, and how, like, yeah, we did a whole thing on the 90s Batman movies, and they were like, well, like, did you really talk about Nolan? I went, not really. So that's a future episode. We'll talk about the
That's
Nolan
not the
movies
90s Batman film.
It's not.
So
exactly.
Why would we?
But anyway, regardless, right now we're 1-1. DC has won 1. Marvel has won 1.
Yep.
Our next fight, representing DC Comics, the Scarlet Speedster, everyone's favorite superhero, the Flash. And representing Marvel, not to be outdone, potential, maybe sometimes son of Magneto, Quicksilver. Who do you think wins?
I mean, after talking about how extensive the Flash's powers are, it's got to be the Flash, right?
Yeah, 100%.
He's the most invincible person in the world. We can barely kill him.
Even if Quicksilver came up with some ingenious way to kill the Flash would somehow come up with something even more ingenious and improbable. And
do you know what it would be? The Quicksilver would come up with some ingenious plan that nobody had ever thought of, but the Flash would just go back in time a split second before Quicksilver thought of that and think of a counterpoint to Quicksilver's point, and then do that before Quicksilver even has a chance to do his thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so yes, that is a victory for the Flash.
Wow, what a surprise!
It just states that the Flash won using superior speed, because we talked about Quicksilver is super fast. The Flash has the ability to access the Speed Force, which gives him a lot more abilities than just being able to run fast.
I would also like to double down and point out again that just having access to the Speed Force is just such a shitty cop out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, yeah, Quicksilver's good, but does he have access to the Speed Force? I don't think so. He must. I mean, if we were just to say who do you think's faster, the Flash or Quicksilver, I think without even taking the Speed Force into consideration, I would go probably the Flash, right? Probably. Quicksilver's pretty fast. Yeah. Probably the Flash. But then they have to compound it with but if you didn't factor in the Speed Force to the what gibberish,
All right, so that puts us at 2 for DC, 1 for Marvel. In our fourth fight, he is the right-hand man of Batman, Robin, versus Wolverine's plucky sidekick of the 90s, Jubilee.
I mean, Robin, right?
Yeah.
He's trained in hand-to-hand combat. He's worked under Batman. He actually knows what to do. It's
but he doesn't have powers.
Right, but Jubilee barely has powers.
You're always thinking you guys would be yeah, X-Men, let's go.
they've retconned Jubilee to be oh, really she has all sorts of crazy powers. It's not just fireworks out of her fingers, but back then when they did this crossover, I also, if you think about it, they're both kids, but Robin's much smarter, much more cerebral. Jubilee's gimmick was always she was a little bit too hot-headed and too juvenile to think Wolverine always had to bail her out and stuff. I would 100% say Robin in this.
And you say she's an X-Man, and you'd think our leanings would be more towards her, but come on. When we did the auction the other week, she only
got her for $1.
She went for $1.
Right. We're fans of the X-Men, but we also know how the X-Men are tiered, right?
We're realistic about it. All right. Well, we won't drag this out any further. That would be a victory for Robin and DC. Robin won by using his cape as a decoy and then tying Jubilee up.
Are you keeping record of how many we're getting right?
Right now you are at 3. 3 correct.
Out of 4?
And 1 wrong.
3 out of 4.
Yeah. Okay.
So also fun fact, after they had their fight and Robin tied her up, she informed Robin that she thought he looked cute, and then the rest of the crossover was just them going on dates.
yeah, that sounds like Jubilee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were both canonically 15, 16 years old at the time too, so In our next fight, one wields the greatest power in the cosmos from DC Comics, the Green Lantern. This would be Kyle Rayner, the artist. And the other wields the power of the cosmic everything and a philosopher to boot, the Silver Surfer. Who do you have winning?
Oh, this one I feel is the most close. This one, the other ones, we were able to spell an answer no problem. Immediately we were 100% this guy, even though we got the first one wrong. But I don't think we should have got the first one wrong, frankly. But this one, like they're both like cosmic powers. They're both like otherworldly, like beyond our imagination kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm going Silver Surfer.
You know what?
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, go for it.
Because Green Lanterns don't get on with the color yellow, and I feel like
silver.
that's. I know, but I mean, like, there's lots of yellow around.
He just holds up a daffodil.
Yeah, and then that's it. Game over.
He's like, fuck! What do I do? How does he look into the sun?
He doesn't.
Like, how can he go outside?
He wears sunglasses.
Well, have you seen Kyle Rayner's mask?
What?
Kyle Rayner has like one of the most interesting masks I've ever seen a superhero character have. It's sort of like someone said it looks kind of like a crab.
Okay.
Anyway,
kind of like a crab.
Kind of like a crab. So anyway, what is the consensus of Silver Surfer?
I don't know, man. I feel like well, John told me why he thinks it's Silver Surfer. I'll tell you why I think it's Silver Surfer, and this might not be a true factor, but I think because the last one was DC, makes sense that this one will be Marvel.
So it is right now 4 for DC, 1 for Marvel at this point.
Is it?
Yeah, or 3 for DC, 1 for Marvel at this point.
It's got it's got to be Marvel. I mean, wait, which Green Lantern is this?
This is Kyle Rayner, so he's the artist, the one who got the ring because the Guardians were like, "This is the only one we have left. You're just gonna have to do."
That doesn't sound like they picked him for his merits, does it?
No.
Whereas the
Silver Surfer that was kind of the gimmick.
The Silver Surfer was specifically picked for his merits to be the Herald of Galactus.
He volunteered though.
Yeah.
Right. But also, like, he had the goods to back it up. He was so good that Galactus still wants him to be his herald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I feel like it's got to be Silver Surfer.
All right, so is that the consensus, Silver Surfer?
Yeah.
I think we're both picking Surfer. Yeah.
All right. You are correct. The Silver Surfer won when they both collided with one another in space, releasing a massive explosion that knocked out the Green Lantern, but left the Silver Surfer completely unfazed.
Right, because he's super cool and can surf. Can Green Lantern surf? We don't know.
No,
probably not.
Cliffy don't surf. Or it's Charlie don't surf if we're going with the apocalypse.
Yeah, well, you close enough, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so that would make you guys right. 4 out of 5 so far are correct in your guesses.
Okay.
And it is now 3 for DC and 2 for Marvel. In our very last fight amongst the ones that the DC and Marvel creators got together and decided on, representing DC Comics, he has the powers of the Greek gods and heroes, Billy Batson, a.k.a. Captain Marvel, a.k.a. Shazam, versus the Asgardian god of thunder, Thor, from Marvel.
Oh. Okay.
I'm not even considering Captain Marvel winning this one.
Well, the thing is, I don't know
the
what
disgust in your voice.
Yeah.
Well, he's got Asgardian heritage, so some respect.
Exactly. He's a god.
I don't know what powers Shazam has. Does he tap into the Speed Force? What kind of bullshit does he have going for him?
He's basically
Shazam.
Superman light.
Well, so here's the fun thing about Shazam. Shazam is he debuted with all these. He was with a different company that DC acquired, and he had all of these abilities that Superman did not have. So his powers were different, and he eventually got the same ones that Superman ended up getting them. So Shazam has the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury.
Yeah, but he's also a kid in an adult's body, whereas Thor is a god who's lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Well, depending on which continuity is he just a man with a bad leg that turns into Thor because he hits his stick on the ground hard enough.
No, that was like a punishment by Odin. Like,
I know. I'm just saying the Donald Blake thing.
But wasn't he
it
always...
largely gets swept into the rug these days.
But even when he did that, he was still a god that existed for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Whereas Shazam isn't. Right? I mean, if we're being strict about it, I don't think he is. I mean, he makes a compelling case, doesn't he?
I just love that this was like, some of these have required debate, and then some of them were like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the consensus is Thor.
Yes.
I mean,
100%.
I would say, listen, does Shazam have a magic hammer?
No, he does not.
Does he have a magic screwdriver?
He's not Doctor Who.
Does he have a magic spanner? Does he have a magic toolbox of any description?
No, he does not.
I mean, I feel... Can he fly?
Yes.
Okay, well, he doesn't have the hammer, so...
He can also call lightning down just by saying his name.
Well, if Shazam can call lightning down, I guess that calls it. I mean, unless Thor can do that as well. John can...
Well, I'm just saying, like, they're a little more evenly matched than you guys are making it out to be.
not really.
There's a reason they chose Captain Marvel to face Thor, is what I'm saying. Like, all of these comparisons are here for a reason.
What was the reason they picked Jubilee to fight Robin?
Because they were both the kid sidekicks of the 90s.
Yeesh.
Yeah,
I think
they were like, all right.
You know what I like about this? Me and John are like pretty unanimous when it comes to picking stuff.
Yeah,
you are.
I like that.
You guys are on it. You're saving me trouble having to figure out the differences.
Yeah. We're in sync. It doesn't matter if we get it wrong. We both believe like this is what is the correct answer. So yeah, I'm gonna go Thor. Yeah.
All right, cool. So that would be correct. Thor beat Captain Marvel when Captain Marvel was forced to change back into his alter ego of Billy Batson. Billy tried to change back, but Thor used Mjolnir to intercept the lightning bolt that would have transformed him back into Captain Marvel, the resulting impact knocking Billy out and sending Thor's hammer flying off into the distance.
That's really smart by Thor to turn him back into a kid, because it's really easy to beat up a kid.
I was going to say, I love the fact he beat up a kid.
Yeah, it's so easy.
I think at this point, Billy was like a teenager, but yes.
He's still a kid. Well, then why didn't he fight Jubilee?
I don't know. Well, because Jubilee can't shout a word and turn into a grown woman.
Jubilee can't do anything.
So, those were the decisions that were reached by the creative teams. 3 for DC, 3 for Marvel, with the DC victories going to Aquaman, Robin, and The Flash, and the Marvel victories going to Elektra, the Silver Surfer, and Thor. You guys did 5 out of 6 correct. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, there were other fights. Now, there were some other, like, sort of one-off images and panels where you would see two characters interact, but they did not get a conclusive winner, or you really even saw anything more than that. However, these were the 5 ballots that went to the comic book stores that the comic book readers that were going into the 90s got to check off who they thought would win in a fight and got mailed off. So these are the real interesting deciding ones. So right now it's tied. 3 for Marvel, 3 for DC. Are you ready to jump into who the readers decided would win between these characters?
Well, this is a bit that's scaring me about it, because I understand the idea of having, writers from different companies come up with who's going to win what, and kind of coming together and figuring it out. But one thing I've learned, and one thing you guys have learned too, and this goes back to our wrestling part of the business, is that whenever you leave a lot of things in the hands of the fans are idiots.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever we think is the logical answer is probably not the correct answer. The correct answer is probably what some fans thought was cool in the 90s. So that's hard for us to go back 30 years and try to figure out. You know what I mean? We weren't there. We weren't present. So whatever is logical is probably not the correct answer. So that's interesting.
I mean, go with your heart. Now these are big names. There's a couple that I don't know if you guys would know or understand the cultural relevance of at the time, but Go with your gut.
Okay.
So we'll start off representing DC, the princess of the Amazons and DC's leading lady, Wonder Woman, versus the African goddess of the weather and X-Man member and sometimes leader, Storm.
Uh-oh.
Mm.
That's tough. That's tough. I mean, right off the bat, I would have said Storm because I love Storm. What do you say, John?
I was going to say I'm sort of leaning towards Wonder Woman on this one.
Yeah. See, that's the trick. Like off the bat, it's hard to tell. They both seem like they have different strengths and different weaknesses. Honestly, you know what? I'm going to continue the streak of us being on the same wavelength. I think in this case, people probably voted for Wonder Woman more than Storm.
She is one of the big three in DC. So
exactly, like you said, she's like their leading lady.
Yeah.
Whereas, as we've covered in Marvel, they don't have like a specific leading lady. They have a lot of like kick-ass women, but they don't have like one definitive, that's our girl. And in DC, like Wonder Woman is, that's our girl. And maybe that's a trickle-down effect where like they have one girl and nowhere else, whereas Marvel have like a lot of women that are really strong and cool. You could argue that point. I'm not going to. I don't have time. But I feel like consensus-wise, the fans are like probably, you know, a lot more fans are going to know who Wonder Woman is straight off the bat.
All right, so the consensus is Wonder Woman?
Yep.
Incorrect. The fans, because it's the 90s, voted for Storm. It's the X-Men's decade, baby.
Yes.
Storm wins the battle after repeatedly hitting Wonder Woman with lightning after a brief melee encounter. In the midst of that fight, Wonder Woman had actually gotten in possession of Mjolnir, and apparently, like, that swayed a lot of things for a period of time until she lost grip of it.
Actually, that does make sense. Like, why she'd be worthy to hold it. That makes sense. But also, like, I love the idea of Storm just whapping it with lightning.
Spamming it again.
That's you know what? That's really cool. Like, I honestly thought people would vote for. You're right though. It is the 90s. The TV show had just come out. Storm was cool. That's a thing we didn't think of. We didn't factor that in.
All right, so that is 4 victories for Marvel, 3 to DC, and that is 5 correct, 6 incorrect, or 2 incorrect for you guys.
Yes.
Okay, our next fight. This is one of the ones that I don't think you guys will know the importance of. Representing DC Comics, the intergalactic bounty hunter, the main man who can't be killed, Lobo, versus the best there is at what he does, the equally unkillable Wolverine, representing Marvel. Marvel. I think at this time he was in the midst of his anti-USA character in the WWF.
He's still the best there
96?
is.
Yeah. Heart Foundation.
Yeah. Best there ever will be. The fact. Now, this is interesting because you had said that this is a 90s thing. And the thing about the 90s is Wolverine was obviously a big thing because of the show. We talked about this. But you had also talked about how big Lobo was in the 90s.
Yes, Lobo was a very big deal for DC in the 90s.
Now, even then, honest to God, I don't think you could get bigger than Wolverine in the 90s, right?
Exactly.
Maybe if you're Kurt Cobain, but very few people were. And only briefly in the 90s.
I was gonna say it, but I was like, well, Dylan loves grunge music. I'm not gonna say anything.
Hey man, it happened. I don't I can do about it. I didn't kill him. Oh.
So is that your answer? That's Wolverine.
I mean, this seems like a slam dunk, right?
Well, I would say Wolverine, but I think we have to think about this from the perspective of other people, and also from the perspective of the way Corey framed this as well, which made it sound like very much the answer is going to be what we don't think it should be.
See, that's what's annoying me. The way Corey framed it was you don't know.
I will tell you right now. I'm not trying to sway you. I'm just trying to let you guys know this was a more equal fight than it sounds like on paper for the time.
Right, which is kind of swaying us towards Lobo.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Go
whenever you
with
say
your
that,
heart.
whenever you say it's a more equal fight than you think, that makes me think that you can see what the voting percentage of each of them was.
No, I don't see the voting
impossible.
percentages.
So, right.
No, I don't think the voting percentages were ever released. I just know winners. That's all I know.
So if it was closer than you think, then does that mean Lobo wins?
I mean,
because I wouldn't have thought Lobo would win at all.
Go with your heart is all I'm going to say.
But our hearts are going to be wrong.
My heart says
Why do you think your hearts are wrong?
My heart is frequently wrong, Corey.
So Dylan, you're going to go with Wolverine. John, where are you going?
Wolverine.
No, I'm going Lobo. I'm too scared to go Wolverine.
You know what? I'm happy about this because, to be fair, up to this point, we have never had a split decision. So, we've done pretty well as a team so far.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy about this. And if this is the one that, and honestly, John, I can see where you're coming from because, let's be honest, Corey, you did kind of sway the vote a little bit.
I didn't sway the vote.
You can say you didn't. You did.
How?
You
just be like, oh yeah, Lobo versus Wolverine. Like, you're like, who the fuck's Lobo?
No, because we talked about Lobo in the last episode. But also, if you'd have just said Lobo versus Wolverine, if you had just said Lobo versus Wolverine, we would have both unanimously said Wolverine. And because you said it was closer than you think, you've swayed the vote. I mean, that's the facts, baby. That's just the way it is.
All right. Well, okay. The winner is Wolverine, because again, it's the 90s and the X-Men ruled the decade.
Thank you.
Wolverine beat up Lobo in a brutal bar fight, which was largely off-panel because of the violence of it, the very violence that was implied, because both of them were very brutal comics in their own right, and
that's such a
this was more mass-marketed. It was.
Oh, they did it off panel. You want to see them fight. That's the point.
Yeah, and these are the two characters that afterwards would absolutely be smoking cigars and drinking together afterwards, because their healing factors have kicked in.
Yeah, they're the same character basically, right? They're pretty much the same. You know? Except one of them is cooler than the other one.
So, all right. We got our next fight. Representing DC Comics. He is Vengeance. He is Justice. He is the Dark Knight, Batman, versus the Sentinel of Liberty from Marvel, Captain America.
Batman.
Ooh. Well, I'm going to talk before John has a chance to tell me what he thinks. You were really quick off that, man.
Batman's not losing.
I mean, honestly, I kind of agree with you. Especially in the 90s, right?
Yeah. Because
in the 90s, we're coming off all those Batman films we already talked about in the previous episode. Go back and listen to all that episode. It was really good. Batman was running high. He was running really good storylines. Captain America wasn't at all. He was a big deal years ago. He is a big deal now, but he wasn't in the 90s. Again, I think we're gonna have to go on the same page and say Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
This has got to be the way it is.
Absolutely.
Plus, also, if we're going by TV show, which is how we judge the last couple, Batman had a TV show in the 90s, really popular.
Yeah.
Really popular. It's got to be Batman, right?
100%.
So
yeah, 100%. Lock it in.
We're gonna save this. We're gonna save this one for last. I'll let you think about your answers a little bit further.
What?
So we're gonna jump into our very next match, our next encounter, representing DC Comics. He is the clone of Superman himself, the Kryptonian Boy of Steel, Superboy, versus the clone of Peter Parker and the present-day Spider-Man at the time, Ben Reilly from Marvel. Clone fight. Who you got?
Oh, what
One's
powers?
Got the power of a Kryptonian.
What does Superboy do?
All right, so Superboy has he has what's called tactile telekinesis. He is able to replicate Superman's powers while not having them. So he has basically, all right, low level. So basically, right, super strength, can fly, incredibly durable. There you go. He doesn't have heat vision at this point. He doesn't have cold breath.
they just make up like a load of like. What was that? What was it called? Tactile telekinesis.
Yes. He basically has a field around his body that he's able to manipulate the world around him in.
Whereas Ben
kind
Reilly,
of like Jean Grey's telekinesis, but it's close to the chest on him, essentially.
Okay. Whereas Ben Reilly is Spider-Man.
Yes.
Like
at this point
he is Spider-Man. Like he's a clone of Spider-Man, sure, but like he has the memories of Spider-Man, he has the powers of Spider-Man. He is Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that the last couple have been for like, well, Batman wasn't, but like we've been hitting Marvel a couple of times. Honestly, well, okay, I'm conflicted because Superboy, if he's just a mini Superman, Superman's gonna win a lot of time. So we get that, but also if we're talking about like experience-wise, Ben Reilly is Spider-Man. He has the experience of Spider-Man. You know,
So that is something to consider here. Is Superboy's age? I think is technically 5 years old, but he has the outward appearance and maturity of a 16-year-old, whereas Ben Reilly is a grown adult man.
Yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, I would say Ben Reilly, but I want to hear what John has to say because he might have a good pitch.
I think in terms of powers, probably I'd go with Superboy.
Right.
Because he feels way more overpowered than Ben Reilly.
Yes.
But this is the 90s, and there was a Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s.
Yes.
And as we've seen,
I can keep going back to the cartoon argument.
Well, I mean,
it works.
It's a true argument. It works.
It's correct.
Exactly. So that's why I'm leaning towards Ben Reilly in this one. God knows how he pulls it off, but
I agree. I feel like power-wise, you look at them and like the Superboy probably has the better powers, but like if we just look at experience-wise, Ben Reilly probably has the edge. Plus the comic, the TV show adaptation, we got to factor that into. That's obviously a big thing. Yeah, I think we're both on Ben Reilly's side this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's closer than you would think, but I think we're saying Ben Reilly.
All right, the winner, Ben Reilly, Spider-Man.
Yes.
With the advantage of his spider sense that Superboy does not have, Spider-Man won by tying up Superboy with impact webbing and electrocuting him with high voltage and knocking him out.
Classic Ben Reilly stuff.
All right. Our next match before we discuss the winner of Batman versus Captain America, he is DC's basic art, the figurehead outside of Batman, the Man of Steel, the last son of Krypton, Superman, versus the gamma-radiated Incredible Hulk from Marvel. What do you got?
Wow. That's not as cut and dry as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think Hulk has, obviously he's the strongest there is, but like he's got the weakness of having Bruce Banner as well, where like he'll turn back into Bruce Banner at certain points. So maybe that works against him, whereas, like Superman is essentially Superman all the time. Unless you get like a different colored sun or kryptonite or whatever. But then Hulk doesn't have any of that.
Right.
Yeah. When was the last time the Hulk did a magic trick?
I mean, from my understanding, the Immortal Hulk comic right now is full of all sorts of weird body horror and stuff.
In fact, I'm reading it right now. And
how's that been?
I'm about 5 issues in, and it's been really good.
I've heard good things. So, who do you got, Hulk versus Superman?
Well, let me put it to you like this. How often would the sun be covered up in regular continuity?
I mean, it's not like Superman's weak at night, because, the sun is there.
Right, but but wasn't that one of the gimmicks where they covered up the sun or whatever?
Well, yeah, that happened in the storyline where he got split into Superman Blue, and where he got the electro powers.
Right, so then that would have made 2 Superman, which would have been in his advantage. Like, how often is he going to run into kryptonite? Probably never, if he's fighting the Hulk. But, like, on the flip side, how often can you calm the Hulk down? It's possible. It's not easy to do, but Superman's he's a very calming, he's a good force. Like, the whole thing about Superman, he's a very optimistic character. You know, he really is he's just a good person. So is it possible that Superman could realize he can't go toe-to-toe with the Hulk, but can calm him down and turn him into Bruce Banner? I think possibly. What do you think, John?
I think, well, probably not gonna, like, calm him down. I think he's just gonna knock him out. Just give him a big haymaker, knock out the Hulk. The Hulk turns back into Bruce. Game over.
So I think we're both on Superman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That is correct. Superman won. After exchanging punches and a burst of heat vision, Superman defeated the Hulk. So, we have Batman versus... Yeah. So we have Batman... So we have Batman versus Captain America. You both went with Batman.
Yes.
And because, like I said, these interpromotional things, there's always a little bit of fuckery, you know. Kerry Von Erich has the Iron Claw on Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler's about to tap, but the referee sees Kerry's bleeding so much, it just calls the match because he's going to take care of Kerry's safety. This is what happens in Batman versus Captain America. The match ultimately ends in Batman's victory, though both are evenly matched after hours of combat. However, a sudden flushing sewer knocks Captain America off balance as Batman manages to strike him with a batarang. Batman rescues Captain America from certain death by drowning, but Captain America's unconscious form nearly drowns Batman, which causes him to lose. Batman pulls him out of the sewer, and he exclaims, "I lost, it may have doomed an entire universe." So therefore, Marvel was declared the final victor, and thus the DC universe was going to be wiped out of existence.
I'm very confused about the end of that. Because I felt like the way you described it at the beginning, Batman definitely won, and then at the end of it, Batman kind of lost.
Yeah, that's what it seems like they ended up saying, is that Batman kind of lost even though he won.
Yeah, he won.
I don't know.
Didn't win.
A referee saw that he was bleeding too much, called the fight.
But he did win, though. So
after the final victory of the battle, a new character, an individual named Access, a man capable of traversing between these two various universes, infuses Batman and Captain America with fragments from their respective universes before the Spectre, who's essentially this guardian character of DC, and the Living Tribunal, the equivalent from Marvel, attempt to create a compromise by fusing the two universes together. This resulted in the creation of the Amalgam Universe, which saw various amalgamated versions of the heroes and villains acting as though they have been in existence for years. So now we're going to talk about the Amalgam world, where this was the consequence of these two things fighting, was that the two universes merged. So in a collection of 24 one-shot comics that were co-published under the moniker of Amalgam Comics, DC and Marvel combined their characters.
Which is really good because you said the previous fights had like 4 issues.
Yes. So
now they have
got another
24 issues. The whole fabric of reality based on 4 issues, and then after that they're like, here's 24. He gives a fuck. There you go.
So this brings about another game. Some of these characters are not seen on panel. They're only mentioned by name, and you can kind of like use context clues to piece out who they are. I think it would be fun if I gave you the name of a character and you told me what 2 characters came to be that character.
Okay.
So there's going to be some easy ones, and there's going to be some harder ones. And what we'll do is I'll give you the name, and then I will give you their, quote, real name if you haven't made your decision by then, to see if that sways you one way or another. So are you guys ready to play?
Yes.
Yeah.
So very famously, our very first is Super Soldier. Who do you think Super Soldier is?
Batman
Captain?
and Jubilee.
I'm gonna say Captain America and Superman.
You know what? After hearing it out loud, I think that's probably a better answer.
There you go. That is correct. The secret identity of Super Soldier is Clark Kent. Don't know, the appearance is mostly Captain America, but he got to keep the Superman name, Superman's real identity. Our next character, the Dark Claw. This is probably the most famous of them.
It's Batman and Wolverine.
Second.
Snicked.
Yes, the real identity of the Dark Claw, Logan Wayne.
Oh.
Whoa, spooky.
How did they come up with that?
Our next one, a villain this time, Deadeye.
Deadpool?
Oh,
Or Deadshot?
and Bullseye.
Yes.
Correct. Deadeye, real identity, Bill Walton. Up next, Dr. Doomsday.
Maggot and Gentleman Ghost.
I mean, do we even have to say for
No,
we
this
have
one?
to say it out
you're
loud.
good. This one is Victor Von Doom, aka Dr. Doomsday. Our next one, also a doctor, another practicing person of the medical world, Dr. Strange Fate.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, it's another one.
again, it's pretty much the same thing, right?
Well, this one's a trick.
Doctor Strange and Doctor Fate.
Yeah,
This one's a trick. It's
So
not
he's not
just
really. He's not a doctor.
two. It's 3 characters that made up this one.
I don't think so.
Yes, it is. Apparently, they felt like this one was
Dr.
too
Nemesis?
on the nose, so they threw a third one.
Doctor
Dr.
Nemesis.
Octopus.
So this is
Doctor Octopus. Yeah.
Dr. Strange Fate, aka Charles Xavier. This is the combination of
What?
Dr. Fate from DC, Doctor Strange, and Professor X from Marvel.
They couldn't think of anybody else for Professor X to go into.
Yep,
not even a doctor.
Right. He's
He's-
just he's a
he's a
professor.
professor.
It's in
He
the
got his
name.
master's, but he didn't get his doctorate.
Oh, it's bullshit.
All right, we got another villain up front. This one's going to be probably the hardest one for you guys. Lethal.
Legion and Ethel.
Fortunately, no.
I
Would
think-
you like this? Did you like the hint of the real name?
Okay, yeah.
Sergei Minerva.
Oh,
Craven?
so Craven and what's that cat lady called? She was in
John, well done.
She was in the Wonder Woman movie.
She was, yes. This is the combination of Craven the Hunter and the Cheetah.
There you go.
Barbara and Minerva. Well done. All right, next we've got another vigilante. This is the Night Creeper.
Nightcrawler? Night Stalker?
That was a serial killer.
Zodiac? Ted Cruz?
I'm struggling.
Let's do it again. Night Creeper?
Yeah.
So the Night
Creeper.
Creeper.
I don't know anybody. Who'd be a creeper?
Mhm.
Night Creeper. This is good. Some of the other ones were like pretty like cut and dry.
Mm.
This one's interesting. The Night Creeper. Is the Night from DC or Marvel?
The Night part is from Marvel.
So it could be Nightcrawler. Creeper, I don't know. I don't know DC enough to know who Creeper would be.
Do we have a name?
Kurt Jack Ryder.
Okay, so Kurt means Nightcrawler is definitely the Marvel
Nightcrawler,
one.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. What was the other one? The second part?
Jack Ryder.
Jack Ryder.
Yeah. This is a character you guys don't know, but there is a character in DC called the Creeper, whose name is Jack Ryder.
Well, no, don't get it.
All right, next up we have the Skulk.
The Hulk.
The Hulk.
And
Skull Kid.
Skulk. Hmm.
The name will not help you on this one because the Skulk's name is just Bruce Banner.
Oh. Oh, goddamn.
So it was SK? Something was like SK
Yes.
at the beginning of it?
SK, Skulk.
No.
Would we know it?
The Skulk is the combination of Marvel's The Hulk and DC's Solomon Grundy.
Oh.
Come on.
No.
All right. Next up, we have Spider-Boy.
It's the two guys who were fighting.
And Superboy. Yeah.
Spider-Man and Superboy, a.k.a. Peter Ross. I don't know where the Ross came from. So there are some titles. So some of these books that came out, I'm going to give you the names of the one-shots. You have Amazon, just Amazon. And Amazon was Wonder Woman, a.k.a. Amazon Princess Aurora of Themyscira. So she was Wonder Woman and Storm combined. We also have Assassins, which is Cat's Eye, which was the combination of Catwoman, Selena Kyle, and Marvel's Elektra. One of the villains that she encountered was Dare the Terminator, which was a combination of Deathstroke the Terminator and Daredevil. We have Doctor Strange Fate, which we discussed as Charles Xavier.
The real cop.
We have the JLX, which was the combination of the Justice League and the X-Men. And some of the Avengers as well. Some of them were not clean copies over. We have Legends of the Dark Claw, whose main villain was the Hyena. Who would you guess the Hyena was?
Jackal?
The Jackal and the Joker?
The Joker and Sabretooth.
Oh, how did that do the Jackal? It's right there.
We have Super Soldier, which we discussed. Then we also have Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bullets and Bracelets, which was a combination of... it was a sort of a team-up book between Diana Prince, who is a copy of Wonder Woman and Elektra, and The Punisher, which was a combination of The Punisher and Steve Trevor, who was Wonder Woman's love interest.
Huh.
Magneto and the Magnetic Men.
Okay.
Yep, which was
like
a sort of a tribute
band.
to. This is a combination of Magneto, of course, and the character Will Magnus and the Metal Men from DC, which is sort of a kitschy team book from the '60s. Speed Demon, which was a combination of Starbrand from Marvel and Hal Jordan. We had Spider-Boy, whose main enemy was Bizarnage.
Bizarro and Carnage.
Yep. And then you had the X-Patrol, which was a combination of the Doom Patrol and the X-Men.
So the X-Men got into it twice?
Oh, X-Men got in here a couple of times. Huh. We had Bat-Thing, Dark Claw Adventures, Generation Hex, JLX Unleashed, Lobo the Duck, which is a combination of Lobo and Howard the Duck.
Thank you.
Super Soldier, Man of War, Challengers of the Fantastic, The Exciting X-Patrol, Iron Lantern, The Magnetic Men featuring Magneto, Spider-Boy Team Up, Thorian of the New Asgods. And those were the Amalgam characters. So there were so many of them. Like I said, there are tons and tons of names listed here. To pick one at random, Cyber Croc, which is a combination of Wolverine's nemesis Cyber and Batman's villain Killer Croc. Like there's so many of these out here. That some of them, most of them, I think, are only mentioned by name. You don't even see them on panel. But anyway, yes, these were all one shots that got put out to really sell this idea of the amalgam universe. So anyway, how did this all get wrapped up? Access found Darkclaw and Super Soldier and used the fragments of the two original universes in them to return them back to normal. The two brothers that represented the DC and Marvel universes did battle with one another, but Batman and Captain America were able to convince Access to fight them also. Reading the minds of Batman and Captain America as they try to stop the fight, the brothers realized that the two men were essentially the brothers in miniature, each one unique among their worlds, but with no interest in conflict. Realizing the pointlessness of the conflict, the brothers withdraw, congratulate each other, with both of them saying, "You've done well." And that was the end of DC versus Marvel. So like I said, this was a event. It was not a good story. It was barely a story at all. But it was just an excuse to see what would happen if you put Superman versus the Hulk. Or Robin versus Jubilee, if you will. So, like I said, I mentioned these were put out as trading. They were trading cards that got made to promote this event as well. There were 100 trading cards. 99 of them were heroes, villains, rivalries, and battles. They were holograms and all sorts of that dorky trading card stuff that people get really intense about these days. And a trade got put out in 1996 that collected the four-issue miniseries. And earlier this year, they announced that there was going to be an omnibus collection put out that was going to capture the main story as well as, I think, if not all of the one-shots that got put out. So that was a time in comics in the 90s where it was a little more Wild West, where you could kind of just do whatever, including making all your characters fight the characters from another company. And then leaving half of the fights up to the fans, which was still a choice.
Did no one learn anything from the fans voting to kill Jason Todd?
Jason Todd did make an appearance in the Amalgam universe as well. He was combined with Deathlock to make a weird cyborg dead man. So, that's fun. But yeah, so it's interesting that they would do something like that, because I can't think today Disney would have so little interest in doing anything close to that.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely, but at the same time, like, I kind of wouldn't be too surprised if, like, somewhere way down the line, a deal was struck to maybe have, like, the MCU crossover with, like, the DC characters. With the way they're doing the like multiversal thing at the moment, like, if they keep going down that road, and if James Gunn can, like, establish a DC cinematic universe which isn't as divisive as what it was under Zack Snyder, then who knows, maybe. But then, like I say, I think it'd be many, many, many years off from happening.
Dylan, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know, man. Like, I don't think it's gonna happen because we've only just recently seen a crossover between Disney and Fox, right? Like,
well, and then Disney had to basically buy all of Fox to do it.
Exactly. Like it's not an easy process. A lot of
But
money
they
goes
proved
into
they
it.
can do it though with Sony and Spider-Man.
Right, but they proved they can do it because there's so much like tape involved, and they did it because Spider-Man is one of the few things that Sony had that actually makes some money. Like, Spider-Man's a hot property, so like you have to find the right hot property. and then be able to cross it over in a satisfying. For example, the Batman versus Superman story we've talked about, that was a crossover that was not satisfactory to people to watch in the cinemas, and that was like an in-house crossover. That was a DC crossover, and it was not fun to watch. So, like, if they can't do it themselves, how can they think of being able to scope that out to like a bigger audience? You know what I mean? I think part of it just comes down to nowadays, everything's just so tribal and so like this company or that company, this or this. And I don't think at the moment any of us have the capacity to be able to do something like that. The thing about that amalgamation universe is that at the core of it, it was just silly, fun stuff that happened. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what really it was. It was just, here's some silly, fun stuff that has no impact on anything. Don't worry about it. But as we've talked about, people take comic book films very seriously. They take comics very seriously. So I don't know if anybody can just have fun with a thing anymore. I would like to think they can, but I don't think this is the right outlet for it. Honestly, I don't think that we could have a good, fun DC versus Marvel crossover.
Yeah, I mean, because thinking on it, like, this was back when Marvel was still Marvel. Like, it was still owned by Marvel. They had not gone bankrupt. They had not almost filed bankruptcy yet. They had not been sold to Disney yet. And I feel like Disney's way more protective of their properties than they would have been previously.
Yes.
So it would, like, for this to happen, it would have to be like if Warner Brothers Discovery and their fire sale to keep their company afloat sells the entire comic book wing over to Disney, which I don't think they would do, because I think they also are like, oh, we can make movies as well. We just have to figure out how to make them good.
Mm.
Which they, they might be doing that with James Gunn. Who knows?
They
then
might
again,
be.
maybe they don't, and then that's sort of the impetus for them to strike
Just
up a deal
sell.
with Marvel, because that's basically what happened with the Sony Spider-Man movies when they did the Amazing Spider-Man, and like those
Tried to
two
compete,
movies.
failed.
Yeah. So who knows? That's all I'm
I mean,
saying.
they got
Who
Kraven
knows?
and the Hunter coming out.
It could be great, man. We don't know.
It's only been delayed, a couple of times.
They're just delaying it so they can make it the best it could be.
They're just still trying to work on the Rhino to make him look less shit.
He looked all right.
He could have looked worse.
The problem is, how are they going to make Swarm look?
Well, yeah, there we go.
Exactly.
If Swarm was in the movie, then I'd be all over it. But
bingo. If they get Swarm right, we're there. 100%.
There you go. I don't know if Swarm was a part of the Amalgam universe.
Probably not. Who's a Nazi?
I don't know who they would have combined
DC
it with.
Comics.
I mean, per Negaton.
Per Negaswarm.
Per Swarm.
Done. Easy.
He's time traveling. He can time travel and is made of bees.
Wouldn't that be scary as shit? I'd be scared of that
I heard
guy.
that buzzing sound. I've heard it before when I was 7 years old. Before my father was murdered in front of me.
By bees.
Bees. Wearing little armbands.
I mean, I think we're coming up with some good ideas here.
You really are.
We're just that good.
All right, folks. That is Marvel versus DC. Those were the victors. I think, Dylan, you came out ahead of John. John made the crucial mistake of not listening to his heart when discussing Lobo versus Wolverine, and that ultimately cost him the victory.
Never bet against Wolverine.
In the 90s.
In the 90s.
Never bet against Wolverine in the 90s.
Dude, in the 90s, it's like Batman and then Wolverine. Right?
Yeah.
And then Spider-Man?
I've been in there.
Yeah?
I've learned my lesson.
Okay. Hey, it's a harsh lesson to learn, but you know what I mean? You'll bounce back.
Yeah.
Yep. John, what's your movie count at?
I don't know.
7,000.
No, it's not improved much because we only recorded not long ago, so it's
Don't
up
break the
to
immersion.
486.
What was the last film you watched?
It was called The Hanging Sun. And it was about a serial killer, well, not serial killer, and an assassin who was miserable with his job and tries to get away, and he ends up on a remote, weird island whilst his boss stroke father tries to track him down, and then he gets involved with the locals, as typically happens in these kind of movies.
Mm-hmm. It sounds good.
If you want to know John's opinions on that, check out his letterbox. John, what's your at?
At Big John Bowski, all one word.
And if you want to know what Dylan's movie count is, he's not going to tell you because he's too busy uploading videos to YouTube. Dylan, what's going on with Explodey Plays?
I mean, you say I'm too busy uploading videos. I'm too busy recording videos. I have not uploaded them yet.
Theoretically, this is the first week of September, though.
I kind of like the idea of me talking about uploading them and then never uploading them. So that's really amusing me. But I do have a lot of episodes of stuff recorded, so I will be putting stuff up at some point. I don't know. Just follow the show on YouTube. I don't know when it's going to go up, but it'll go up soon because the stuff I have is good. I know it's good. So Explodey Plays on YouTube. Google that. It's got a little face of me on it. You'll know because it's me. Just follow it now. And then when the videos turn up, you'll be like, well, there the videos are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'll recognize the thumbnails.
I have to figure out the thumbnails because I don't know how to do. Obviously, I don't know how to do good thumbnails, but I'll sort something out. Anyway, where can people find you, Corey?
Well, if you want to hear more of me talking into a microphone, I have a weekly podcast called Large Old Cup. It comes out every Wednesday or Thursday, where it's just 30 minutes of me with a topic. That's actually probably what I'm going to be recording whenever we wrap up here.
What's it going to be about?
I don't know yet. I usually don't know until I hit record. It's kind of fun.
Okay.
Like last episode, I talked about my cat's diabetes diagnosis, which was fun.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, while we were recording this episode, my vet called wanting me to schedule an appointment so they can get his baseline readings. So that's fun.
Okay.
Yep. Anyway.
Yep.
If you've been listening to us on Spotify, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, check us out on Spotify. It's the same name, both places. Not many people choose the Smark Avengers, weirdly enough. I kind of like that. Pick a podcast name that people aren't going to be able to guess.
What?
Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.